Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lisa with Undermined Propaganda. It is July 31st, 2026, the last day of July, Friday afternoon. First, thank you guys all so much for engaging with my videos. I greatly appreciate it. Liking, sharing, commenting, and also subscribing. Here is a list of the names of subscribers that I already have. As they come through, I will add to this list and show them on the screen. I appreciate all you guys so much. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. There was a debate on Piers Morgan this week with Seyed Marandi, professor at Tehran University, and one of many villains in our society here in America, Alan Dershowitz. The protector of the genocidal state of Israel, also a lawyer who has represented people like Jeffrey Epstein, a person who has been credibly accused of sexual assault. Virginia Dufresne had in her book and verbally announced and talked about the allegations against Alan Dershowitz, which of course he denied. However, I don't know about you, but when you look at moral character of individuals and who is more believable, we'll just leave it at that. Anyway, it is good for once to see someone calling out Alan Dershowitz the way he should be called out. He is a manufactured person in the upper echelons of American society, always been revered and respected and listened to, called on shows to give his opinion and talk publicly in support of Zionism. And no one ever really calls him out. At least he has been called out here and there, but not the way Professor Marandi does in this interview. And it is this is what we need to see. This is what people need to be doing. No more fear of calling out the facts. No more fear of calling out these people, these ghouls that support and continue to support genocide, continue to support the American empire and their illegal wars. Enough is enough. Call it out, be clear, and I'll tell you what, Professor Marandi does exactly that. The courageous man goes on all different channels and he speaks the truth about what's going on. And he has no fear in doing so. His commitment to vulnerable people and people of Palestine is unwavering, and he shows it here in this interview. So let's go ahead and take a look at this interview. Okay, in this section here, we'll start in the video. Piers is basically asking Alan, you know, the Trump administration said that we completely obliterated Iran's nuclear capacity last year. So what was the need to go back to war with them? We already said America already said that problem of Iran having a nuclear weapon was taken care of. So why are we at war now? What other reasons now? Because it's just all these fabricated reasons why we're attacking Iran, because, they're so dangerous. And if they get a nuclear weapon, they'll destroy the world. Even though Israel is the one that has the nuclear weapons, not Iran. Even though America obviously has a nuclear weapon, America is the only country that's ever used nuclear weapons. But Iran is the problem. Iran. You can just see all the contradictions all the time with these people. So let's go ahead and see how Alan answers a question as to why we needed to go back to war again with Iran.
Enriched uranium. They've given no indication that they're prepared to surrender any of that. And their chances, therefore, of developing the nuclear weapon in the way that you fear seem to be exactly the same as they were before all this. And again, I'll repeat what I said to Don Spillman, which is we were assured at the end of the 12-day war by President Trump that had put back Iran's nuclear aspirations in terms of developing a nuclear weapon by decades. And yet 8 months later, we have to launch a fully fledged war against them because they're about to use nuclear weapons. These things can't all be true.
No, it's true. That's absolutely accurate. But what it has done is it's set back the program considerably. For example, yes, they still have enriched uranium. By the way, why do they have it if they're not trying to develop nuclear weapons? But they're buried. And both Israel and the United States have satellite eyes on it. And right now, it's not accessible to them. Right now, the centrifuges are in great difficulty. Small victories when it comes to preventing nuclear war are very, very important. And, I think a lot of people make the mistake of assuming one side is going to win, one side is going to lose. No, we can have a calibrated successes. And what we're seeing here is a calibrated success in setting back the nuclear program, not 20 years, not 6 months, probably a couple of years. The threat is not imminent, and there are many things that can happen. We don't know what the fate of Pickaxe Mountain is going to be. It too may be subject to attack because of its ability to produce perhaps nuclear weapons. This is an ongoing battle. It will not end in 5 weeks. It will not end in 5 years. The goal is to make sure that Iran never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, develops nuclear weapons. And my opponent on the other side doesn't seem to have a problem with that. He doesn't think Iran ever wants to develop nuclear weapons. So why don't you come to the table, make a deal that will make it absolutely impossible to do what you say Iran wants to do, and that is not develop a nuclear weapon. We can have peace if you come to the table and present the United States and the world with an airtight...
Okay. We can have peace if Iran comes to the table and doesn't develop a nuclear weapon. Iran, the country who has not attacked any other country around them in 47 years. Iran, when Israel and America are constantly at war, constantly. And that is not an overstatement. The people creating chaos, the institutions, the countries, the states creating chaos in the Middle East and around the world, by the way, is obviously without a doubt and factual that it is Israel and it is the United States. It's the American empire. So for this man, for this ghoul to say to Professor Marandi, who is constantly, his country is constantly attacked. He has been attacked. His people have been murdered. Tell him that his country needs to come to the table and start to work towards peace. His country needs to be the one, because his country is the one that's causing chaos. He's a ghoul, and he's a transparent lying ghoul. Alan Dershowitz is. All right, let's see how Professor Marandi responds to this.
Not the old plan, but an airtight plan to do what you say you want to do. That is, prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. So here, we can be on the same page here, and we can avoid further war. Just come to the table and do that. Just assure the world that your promise, which is hollow, obviously, speaking on behalf of the Iranian regime, that you don't want to develop nuclear weapons, that your promise can actually be made certain on the ground. Then we can have peace.
Okay, Professor Marandi.
Oh, is it my turn? Because you've been, for the last half an hour, you've been busy with the spokesman for genocide and Epstein's buddy, who used to go to Rape Island with him. For a person who frequented Rape Island, I think anything that he says is nonsense. I listen to him, but he's a lawyer, yet he cannot tolerate the words of a layman. That's how weak his argument is. Now, of course, someone who supports the genocidal regime of Israel would say this sort of nonsense. And of course, we recall how the South African government in its ICJ complaint showed genocidal intent by the Israeli regime, including the Israeli prime minister, whose spokesman you brought on and had this little love fest before this discussion. And
you know what, you don't have to keep making Professor Marandi, just to be clear, it wasn't a love fest. I can spend my time saying some tough statements. I treated him with the same respect I try and treat you until you inevitably go invariably go ad hominem on people. Try not to go ad hominem. Stop with the silly digs. Stick to the proper debate we're having, and viewers may learn something. Force yourself.
Let the viewers judge, Piers. I know where you stand, Piers. I saw your previous interview with Ehud Barak. I saw it with his spokesman. We know where you stand, so that's not really important. But the point is that
where do you think I stand? Where do you think I stand?
You stand with the genocide. You stand with the ethno-supremacist regime. I once asked you 3 times in a row, do you consider an ethno-supremacist regime to be legitimate? And you refused to answer. And the tone of your language, the fact that I'm not allowed to speak.
Hang on, just to be clear, and I want to get back to the debate in a moment, but just to be clear, I've repeatedly asked you in our numerous interviews, and I platform you regularly, something you always try and diminish in terms of its significance, but I do, and I've always asked you to tell me one critical thing about your own regime, and you always fail, which is very telling. So let's just park that to one side. So let's get back to the debate.
My regime is infinitely superior to your genocidal regime that helped the Israeli regime in the genocide. My regime, as you like to call it, your guest doesn't want me to speak, obviously. My regime did not pull the plug on little infants in the hospital, in the premature babies in the Al-Nasser hospital. Pull the plug on those premature babies and let them die. My regime didn't do that. The regime that you support did that. But getting back to the topic, the reality is that chemical weapons were used on our country with the support of your government. I survived 2 chemical attacks. And then your guest has the audacity to say that Iran would use weapons of mass destruction. During the Iran-Iraq war, the state, the leader, refused to produce chemical weapons. Even though the military politicians asked him, he said, no, it's immoral. So we had to suffer your chemical weapons, and your governments prevented our government from even purchasing gas masks. My gas mask was bought on the black market. It was North Korean. So don't talk about weapons of mass destruction to me when my friends have died because of your chemical weapons. Your regime is the regime that has used nuclear weapons twice. And your ally, your genocidal ally, the apartheid regime, the illegitimate regime, where 44% of young Jews below the age of 35 in the United States, believe that Jews and Palestinians have to live together in one state with equal rights. That is exactly the Iranian policy. So despite your propaganda, despite your nonsense, despite the lies that you promote, people are waking up. Jews in the United States are waking up. Christians, Muslims, people from all walks of life are seeing who's carrying out a Holocaust in Gaza. You know, Ronald Reagan.
And that's exactly it, too. And he calls it out right there. He states facts. They did unplug the incubators and infants died, and they did it intentionally. And this stuff is documented. This is why there is a case at the ICJ against Israel for genocide. And the fact that we're talking to Iran about peace when we are arming and supporting and being as an American empire, supporting Israel in the genocide in Gaza, not only is that still ongoing, this ridiculous people saying that it's been, there's a pause, that there's a cessation when they're killing Palestinians every single day and continuing to starve them. And just like Professor Marandi also says here, the American empire is the only one that ever used nuclear weapons. We did. We were the aggressors. And Israel is constantly an aggressor and continues to be an aggressor. And continues to commit genocide in Gaza and is now committing genocide in southern Lebanon because they can't not be at war. They can't not be at war. So Professor Marandi does a fantastic job here too. And the fact of the matter is when you look at someone's moral character and what they support is genocide and murder and starvation of an innocent, vulnerable population of people. What else? I mean, you cannot take anything else they say as being anything that has any moral character. Because if they are willing to support that, they're willing to support anything evil and nothing good. So Professor Marandi, and he called him out as far as being on Epstein Island, that a lot of people won't say anything to him about. They'll refrain from even speaking about that. Professor Marandi was not going to do that. He was just going to lay out the truth of this man who is, again, I will say it, in the upper echelon of American society, who is respected for some ungodly reason and been elevated and called on shows for his opinion and looked at as an intellectual, as a respected intellectual in our society. It's embarrassing as an American citizen. It really is. All right, let's take another look at another section of this real quick. All right, in this section, Piers is asking Alan about the fact that Israel is more unpopular than they have ever been, and kind of how he feels about it, what he thinks about it, and where they should go from here, and see what Alan's response to this question is.
And not least in the United States, where 50% nearly of Americans said they would like to see Netanyahu arrested for war crimes, where 2/3 of Americans have a negative view of Israel. You know, my view of this is that Israel's current government is populated with people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, these other guys, who are complete psychopaths, and that the activities that they are promoting...
And I'm sorry, but this is just another propaganda talking point that just drives me absolutely insane. It is not just a couple of headbangers, as Piers always says, in the Israel government. There is a majority of Israeli Jews that believe that what they are doing in Gaza to Palestinians is legitimate, and even that they're not going far enough. They support the starvation, they support the slaughter. And now it's not to say that there aren't Israeli Jews that are against it, because there are. The tragic part of it is just a very small percentage. So this is not just a couple headbangers in the Israeli government that if you just got rid of them, then everything would be fine. And I've said that before, but it's not. It's an entire society. It is a majority of a society. It is the entire Israeli government. And it is people that are running against Benjamin Netanyahu, like Naftali Bennett, who support this brutal slaughter of innocent people that support the genocide. So every time Piers does that, he's lying to you. He's lying to you. Let's go ahead and finish.
For example, the West Bank at the moment and so on, are making Israel a global pariah. Does that not concern you?
Of course it does, and I'm not at all a supporter of Ben-Gvir. I'm not a supporter of Smotrich. I am a supporter of the nation-state of the Jewish people. I am a proud Zionist. Zionism is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people. Israel is the only non-colonialist state in the Middle East. All the other states were established by colonialist regimes after the First World War. Israel fought against colonial.
And you see Seyed there, sorry I had to stop it again, Professor Marandi laughing when Alan just said that. The only non-colonial state? Are you friggin' serious? They're like the definition of a colonialist, imperialist, apartheid state. Whoops.
And self-determination. I'm not here to support everything Israel does. I wouldn't vote for Ben-Gvir. I wouldn't vote for Smotrich. I have to tell you that if in 1935, Winston Churchill had been the Prime Minister of England, and he had gone into Germany and attacked them, he would be the most unpopular person in the world. It's very unpopular to engage in preventive wars because you don't know what you're preventing. History is blind and deaf to the future. You only know what you're doing now. And so it takes enormous courage of the kind that not only Winston Churchill had, but that Benjamin Netanyahu has had, that Ronald Reagan has had, that George Washington had back in the day. It takes tremendous courage to get involved in a war that is unpopular. The Revolutionary War was unpopular with many parts of the United States. It was the right war, the Second World War. Nobody wanted to get into it from the United States. Lindbergh was against it. The Poles were showing against it. It took enormous courage to take on Adolf Hitler. And, I hate to say this, but I think I'm in 1935, and I'm sitting opposite Joseph Goebbels right now, and he's making the propaganda case for the Nazi regime, just the way this professor is making the propaganda case for the new Nazi regime, which is the regime of Iran. Will you at least admit, sir, that Iran murdered in cold blood as many as 50,000 innocent protesters? And would you admit, if that's true, that comes closer to genocide than anything that Israel has been accused of doing in self-defense after its people were raped, kidnapped, murdered on October 7th? Would you at least admit that the Iranian regime has killed many thousands of people? Yes or no?
Okay, before we listen to his response, this is another line of propaganda that has been used to justify this illegal war in Iran. And let me show you something really quick. Good old Alan there throwing out the propaganda that the reason that we went to war with, at least one of the many lines of propaganda, was that Iran was killing thousands upon thousands of their innocent civilians in Iran. So Trump wanted to go over there and protect them. Like, come on. We're killing Americans. We're killing other innocent people, immigrants here in America, on American streets, shooting them in the face, shooting them in the head. And Trump wants to go over there and protect Iranian citizens, which is just absolutely preposterous. It is preposterous. But one, the number keeps going up. It went from 20,000 to 30,000 to 40,000 to 50,000. Now, Dershowitz is saying there was 50,000 innocent people killed. Okay, just a reminder of back when that happened. Donald Trump called into Fox News and admitted that we had people there in those protests intentionally trying to topple the Iranian government. So those innocent protesters that Alan Dershowitz speaks of, the 50,000, which is, again, a number that hasn't been proven anywhere close to it. The Defense News, Trump reveals U.S. sent weapons to Iranian protesters via Kurdish groups. April 5th, 2026. Trump said it himself. This is not something I made up. This is not something other people made up. This is a fact. Trump himself admitted to sending weapons to Iranian protesters to try to topple that government. So let's go ahead and finish listening to what Professor Marandi says and how he answers to Alan's statement there.
We are not in 1935. We are not in 1939. We are in 1942. You are the Nazi regime that is carrying out a Holocaust in Gaza. You are the Nazi who is doing it as we speak. You're the evil monster. You say Israel is not a colonial regime? You're from Eastern Europe. You're European. All of those Ashkenazi Jews who are now running the country, they're from Eastern Europe. You came and slaughtered. I didn't interrupt you as you were ranting. The people who you support, the people who are running the country, they're Polish. They're Ukrainian. Yeah. They're from Czechoslovakia. They're from Eastern Europe. You're not an anti-Semite. You're the anti-Semite because you've been slaughtered. You won't let me talk. You're afraid. You're afraid because you know you have no argument. You have no leg to stand on. You slaughtered the Semite Palestinians. and you took their land, and you are a proud Zionist who supports a regime that celebrates the rapists in prison. They rape Palestinians in prison, and then they're celebrated on television. This is, if you don't let me talk, you're just exposing yourself. You're exposing yourself. You're exposing yourself just as you exposed yourself with Epstein.
I'm Israel.
So in response to your nonsense, the nonsense about 50,000 people, those lies have been responded to by the Iranian people. Stop ranting. I'm speaking. You're a lawyer. You're a lawyer. 3,117 people died thanks to an armed insurgency that your regime and the Israeli regime funded and supported. And you're a coward. You are a coward. You won't let me talk. You're afraid. You're afraid of me talking.
Don't tell me I'm afraid.
The lawyer, Epstein's lawyer, Trump's lawyer, is afraid of me, a layman, talking. Why? Because you have no legs to stand on. The Iranian people have spoken. They went to the streets in the tens of millions. They went. You're a coward. You won't let me talk. I let you talk because I'm not afraid of you. People are not afraid of you anymore. You can kill Epstein. You can kill whoever you like, but we're not afraid. You can bomb my house. You can kill me with my family, but I'm not afraid of you. I will support the Palestinian people until your regime bombs my home. So go and tell them that. I'm prepared to die for the Palestinian people. But you who used to frequent Epstein Island, you have no principles and no morality. The Iranian people came to the streets in the tens of millions.
And that's it right there. I mean, thank you. Thank you, Professor Marandi. I mean, a sobering voice in this time of such darkness, to see what my government does, to see what Israel continues to do, to have somebody come on there and have the courage to speak the truth, And it does take courage, because Israel does nothing but assassinate people. So he is in danger, and he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He has convictions. He believes in those. He stands up for those. He speaks out for those. Unlike someone like Alan Dershowitz, who's a sad, sad little man, nearing the end of his life. And this is how he's chosen. His whole identity has been supporting, protecting, and advocating for those people that hurt, slaughter, sexually assault vulnerable people. Alan Dershowitz's life, that is what it has been, what it means, and that is the legacy he has created. Lindsey Graham went to his grave with a legacy like that. Alan Dershowitz will do the same. But thank you again, Professor Marandi. Great respect I have for you and for those that speak out like that. It gives me a North Star of how humans are supposed to be, living in a world with so many humans that act like Alan Dershowitz, living in a society where people like Alan Dershowitz are elevated. To be able to see that kind of true humanity it gives me hope in the human race. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you have any thoughts, comments, let me know. Let me know what you think of this interview, of this debate, of this topic, of Alan Dershowitz, of Professor Marandi, of Piers Morgan, of the video in general. And if you found anything valuable at all, please like it. Please subscribe. It is free. And importantly, I hope you find some peace in the rest of your day. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.